Chapter 95, The Most Valuable Ability 2. However, the Black Crown Queen Bee continued to get stronger. Despite its characteristics getting stronger, there were no changes. The genetic mutations brought about by the genetic transcriptional fluid of the Black Crown Queen Bee would manifest in 4 areas. They were mind power enhancement, mind power crowd control, mental chain, and mental whip. These 4 abilities were what the Black Crown Queen Bee could do. Only by strengthening its mind power could the Black Crown Queen Bee control more and more worker bees. Mind power crowd control was the ability of the Black Crown Queen Bee to command thousands of worker bees at once. The mind power chain was a long-range ability of the Black Crown Queen Bee. It had relied on this ability to give orders to the worker bees 500 kilometers away. The mental whip was the method used by the Black Crown Queen Bee to punish the worker bees for their mistakes or even kill them for their mistakes. It was also the only ability that could directly attack a person's mind power. According to the research conducted by Shang Long, the founder of Research Institute No. 14, he had come up with a general direction for the mutation of a human's mind power after being administered with the genetic transcriptional fluid of the Black Crown Queen Bee. Humans would definitely strengthen their mind power. As long as they survived after being administered with the elixir, their mind power would definitely be enhanced. This strengthening had both quantity and quality. It enhanced both the total amount of their mind power and the quality of their mind power. Simply put, based on Zhaoxu's recommendation, Zhu Tui's total amount of mind power had increased by 25%. However, at the same time, the strength of Zhu Tui's mind power also increased. More accurately, the mental alls that Zhu Tui had condensed with his mind power now were only as strong as rocks. However, after being administered with the elixir, the strength of the mental all that Zhu Tui condensed with his mind power might be the strength of an iron weapon. Students from the extreme branch had been through long-term training. They had no problems blowing up rocks with a punch. However, it was basically impossible for them to blow up metal. At least, a first-year student would not be able to do that. It was hard to say what the other 3 genetic mutation abilities would be like. Under normal circumstances, an individual would be able to obtain 2 mutation abilities after they were successfully administered with the genetic transcription elixir of the Black Crown Queen Bee. The first enhancement to his mind power was guaranteed. The second would depend on his luck. Miss Anne, was the second mutant ability you obtained back then a crowd control of mind power? Zhu Tui suddenly asked. Yes, and Zhaoxui nodded. She then casually tossed out a handful of silver pills. This time, she tossed out over 100 silver pills. After I obtain this ability, I can control more silver pills than this. However, it was limited by my mind power. The more silver pills I controlled, the less powerful and accurate a silver pill would be. Basically, 30 to 40 is the best amount that I can control during wartime. Miss Anne, out of the 3 remaining abilities, which one do you think is the most valuable? Or rather, which genetic mutation ability do you hope that I can obtain? Zhu Tui asked. There is no doubt about it. It has to be a mental whip. And Zhaoxui had a look of certainty. Why do you say that? Because Seth's mental whip is the only ability you can obtain to directly attack mind power at your current level. Have you realized that our mind power is temporarily unable to directly attack the minds of other students? Even if you specialize in the radiation influence branch, you can only influence the mind of another person with a specific frequency. You cannot directly attack the mind of another person, and Zhaoxui explained. Can't I? Zhu Tui was a little disappointed. Miss Anne, I wanted to wait for my mind power to become stronger and directly condense a mind thorn to pierce into someone else's mind to severely injure the enemy. You can. However, you might have to reach the peak of the genetic evolution stage or even the genetic transmutation stage before you can accomplish that, and Zhaoxui explained. Why? That will have to do with the source of our mind power. Where do you think our mind power comes from? And Zhaoxui asked. Brain. Zhu Tui pointed to his head. Something like that. The modern theory of mind power in the Great Genetic Age states that our brains are a powerful source of high-frequency signals. Our mind power comes from this. All of us have this ultra-high-frequency powerful signal source. However, its function is not only to give us mind power. It can also protect us from the attacks and disruptions of other ultra-high-frequency and powerful signals. Under such a situation, even if our mind power is powerful, we would not be able to directly harm someone else's mind with our mind power unless we have a fundamental breakthrough, or have obtained an extremely unique frequency of mind power, and Zhao Soxui explained. Because they have the protection of the brain, which is a powerful source of high-frequency signals. That's right, even though your mental senses are very powerful. If you are not contacted by any medium, your mental senses can only detect that I am here. You cannot see the surface of my body. And Zhao Xu's expression became a little awkward when she said this. Zhu Tui's face became a little red. He did not expect Zhao Soxui to use that as an example. However, if you can obtain the mental whip ability of the Black Crown Queen Bee, it would give you the ability to directly attack an enemy's mind power at this stage. It would definitely be a trump card at the critical moment. And Zhao Soxui shook her head vigorously after she said that. It's about time. Try it out quickly and see what the second ability you activated is. I can't take it anymore. Zhu Tui closed his eyes and concentrated. He did not notice any whips of mind power, much less the connection that Zhao Soxui had described. Instead, he felt a long, slender chain of mind power extending into the distance. It only stopped when it reached the entrance 100 meters away. What is it? Xiaoxu was a little anxious. It's not the mental whip, it should be the mental chain. I feel that there is a tentacle-like mind power that can extend to 100 meters away. If it is not limited by the space, it should be able to continue extending, Zhu Tui said. This ability is not bad. Furthermore, with this ability, you can use a very cool skill, and Zhao Soxui said with a smile. A very showy and cool skill. What's that? Zhu Tui had a curious expression. Let's not worry about that for now. Continue to focus and train. The 8 hours after you are administered with the genetic transcriptional fluid will be the enhancement phase, and Zhao Soxui instructed. Alright, Miss N. Zhu Tui was very obedient in that regard. He quickly closed his eyes and followed Zhao Xu's instructions to influence the situation through influence. Since Zhu Tui's headache was gone now, he instantly entered a meditative state. He concentrated and entered the illusory introspective state. Zhu Tui realized that he suddenly had 6 more activated genetic base points in his head, after he was administered with the genetic transcriptional fluid. Furthermore, out of the 6 genetic base points he had already activated, 2 of them had turned from white to a dull silver. This should be the effects of the genetic transcriptional fluid of the Black Crown Queen Bee. Suddenly, Zhu Tui's expression froze. In his illusory introspective state, 2 blurry gray genetic base points were expanding rhythmically. A thought uncontrollably welled up in his mind. The next instant, Zhu Tui concentrated his mind power on the 2 rhythmic gray genetic base points. Zhu Tui started to use the mind concentration technique to gently activate the 2 unknown genetic base points. He thought about it and felt that it was a little inappropriate. Zhu Tui opened his eyes and shouted toward the roof, Huang, start monitoring the changes in my brainwaves and vital signs. Inform me immediately if there are any abnormal changes. All right. Huang's displeased voice rang out. Zhu Tui, who had just opened his eyes, froze. And Zhao Soxui had already fallen asleep on the chair during these few seconds.